The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the blending of data analytics and DevOps, meaning developers, data scientists, and product managers will need to work more closely together than ever before. We'll talk about how the worlds of data science and software development are colliding on this episode of Dynamic Developer. I'm your host, Bill Detweiler, and this week I'm talking with Michael O'Connell, Chief Analytics Officer at Tibco Software, about how analytics is merging with DevOps, the data science work his company has done helping organizations respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, and what that work tells them about the future of software development and analytics. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Bill.
All right, so before we get started talking about data analytics and DevOps and how the current COVID-19 pandemic is affecting that, give me a little rundown on Tibco Software. You all specialize in data analytics. Tell me about what you do.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Tibco Connected Intelligence Platform's got three pillars. There's the Connect pillar, it's API-led microservices, real-time data integration. The Unify pillar is where we virtualize data, we model data, master data, metadata, reference data, and create virtualized views on multiple source systems, primarily data at rest, but real-time data sources as well. And then feeding that into the analytics layer, which includes our visual analytics, data science, and streaming analytics. So kind of three pillars to the platform, and most business problems we can cover by combining those building blocks and creating analytic applications.
And you work on everything from retail to the COVID-19 pandemic, all sorts of data science questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As Chief Analytics Officer, I'm customer facing. It's an offensive position, but I've also got one foot in the product teams where I help drive the input for the product evolution based on what I'm seeing in the field. So yeah, we work heavily in the finance sector, energy, manufacturing, retail, consumer goods, telco, travel, transportation, logistics. All of those industries have been affected in various ways by COVID-19. I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, so I'm really interested to hear a little bit more about your role as Chief Analytics Officer. A lot of times we hear the CXO moniker applied in technical positions these days because there are so many variants, everything from a CISO, CTO, CIO. So talk a little bit about what the Chief Analytics Officer role is.
Yeah, so it's like I was saying, it's one foot with in the customer and one in the product, right? So, and it's also building out the ecosystem a little bit. So, customer innovation, community, but I meet with a lot of customers, all our marquee customers and bigger accounts. Help them figure out their digital strategy and so on, and really try and understand what are their data sources, what are they trying to get done, where is their opportunity to create value with digital transformation initiatives that are driven by analytics and data science. And then those sort of learnings, I bubble back to the product teams where I'm kind of joined at the hip with a lot of the product managers, tell them what I'm seeing, as we figure out the next releases of the product, what's going to really create, move the needle for our customers and their businesses, create value, with our software. So it really is a fun job to kind of, help our customers use data science and analytics to transform their businesses and then use that to transform our software to generate that value for our customers.
I think that's something that's really interesting. What you said was around helping the customers unlock their data or understand what they are trying to do with data. Because when I talk to data analytics folks, one of the things they say is a lot of times they go out to companies and the companies have data, or they think they have data, or they want to collect data, but they don't necessarily know what question they're trying to answer with the data. And that's really the first place to start. It's not, let's collect everything and then figure out how we sort through it later. Let's figure out the problems we're trying to answer first, and then design a system that helps us collect the data we need to answer that question, and then can help us make the decisions based on that answer. So how difficult is it to help companies, or Talk a little bit about that role. When you walk into a company and they say, look, we want to do X, how much of a challenge for you is it to help them shape their what they want to do with data?
Yeah, so I mean, like you say, you're going to focus on the high value business problems where you can really, generate revenue to the bottom line, or take out cost, improve productivity, manage risk. What are the big initiatives that the, executive leadership team has for the company, and how can, analytics play a big role in generating value around those initiatives? That's kind of the starting point. And, in some industries, the value calculations, can be ginormous. When you're thinking about, say, energy sector being depressed at the moment, but that's a time when you can optimize. So how do you get the most out of, different production facilities? If you can, minimize downtime on a high producing asset, that's like the value calculation is off the charts. If in the current climate, say in the lower 48 at least, when a well stops producing, do you even bother bringing it back up? How's the strategy different for, lower 48 versus offshore? And, the national oil companies run their business very differently. They're providing energy to their country, which is different than taking a profit out of a shale oil well, which is, less profitable at the moment. So everybody's got their own business objective. How do we, optimize that with analytics is the challenge. And in in the current COVID world, retail, CPG, these industries are really kind of transforming right in front of our eyes. And analytics is a big deal for optimizing, all of the aspects of those businesses, supply chain, all that kind of stuff.
Well, let's talk about that because Tibco has done some interesting work around COVID-19. And looking at, done some modeling around the virus sort of spread, trying to help your customers, help people be able to sort of reopen, get back to business, figure out how this is going to affect their businesses. Tell me about some of the initiatives that Tibco has undertaken in these last few months.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, firstly, it's important to realize that, the COVID or the virus is hidden from us. And so it's, data science and analytics becomes hugely important in finding out what the hell's going on out there. It's like, what you see right now happened 2 to 3 weeks ago, or, what you're looking at right now is going to show up in 2 to 3 weeks. It's kind of like a Twilight Zone episode. You're predicting the future, but the future is actually right here, right now. It's odd. It's like this weird time delay. And so, we've got in the work we've been doing, analyzing the COVID cases worldwide, we've got models that are predicting, the reproduction number of the virus, and all these spikes that are occurring in Florida and all that. We knew about those three weeks ago. We knew that was going to happen. But exponential growth is tricky for people to get, especially when it's hidden. It's like, there's a delay between when you get infected and you're infectious until you get symptoms and you're infecting all these other people, right? So if you think about, 2 to the 7th is 128, 2 to the 14th, 16,384. And so you think, I've only got 128 cases. I'm making an analogy here, obviously,
Right.
but
Yeah.
but that the way that it is hidden and exponentially growing, all of a sudden you've got these problems on your hand. But we can predict that. We've got models that are predicting the reproduction of the virus. There's lots of problems with the data as well. It's got a lot of reporting artifacts. Mondays, a lot of cases are reported. The weekend, not so much. There's lots of errors and artifacts in the data. So smoothing that out and fitting models to actually find the signal in a noisy landscape, another important data science contribution. So in dealing with the data, we've got a lot to offer. And then we mentioned CPG and retail. How do you predict a retail business when traditionally that's done with same store sales and there's no store sales? So it's like getting the e-commerce data, combining it with what limited in-store sales you might have, and then starting to understand which type of stores might get sales. It's not going to be indoor malls. It's not going to be stores that are in tourist driven areas. There's little tourism. So how do you start to understand the attributes of the stores and, where revenue might come from, and how to, maximize the e-commerce revenue? There's also, the ad spend, media landscapes changed as people are moving their ad spend to channels like Hulu and away that everybody's watching, and away from more traditional channels. And we are seeing spikes in e-commerce revenue. So, lots of people buying loungewear and, floral pink pajamas and stuff. But I mean, that's kind of some of the oddities we've found in data mining the sales. But in general, e-commerce sales are kind of going through the roof. And how do you then manage the store reopenings and predict the business when all of that is, the sands are shifting under our
Yeah.
feet?
And I think something that's also really interesting that you touched on a little earlier, and we talked a little bit about before the show, which was, this pandemic came on quickly when it did come on. I mean, not to talk about, you can debate how soon people should have known or did know about it, but from a from a perspective of the shutdown, companies had to react very rapidly to the changing business climate, to a changing workforce. And you talked about some of the ways that Tibco, that your team had to kind of quickly spin up some of these efforts. You were talking about how you had data scientists, data analytics folks really having to rush into DevOps and kind of try to, okay, how can we actually take, how can we spin these processes up? How can we spin these services up? How can we spin the analysis up very kind of quickly, right? And vice versa, you have companies that were trying to react really kind of quickly to this pandemic, and saying, DevOps folks saying, oh, well, we need to integrate data science into our processes, into the apps that we're building. We have people asking us for tools to help them address these challenges, and we need data in the app. And that creates kind of this back and forth a little bit between DevOps and data science. Talk a little bit about that from your perspective, from working there at Tibco and doing this, and what you're seeing with your customers.
Yeah, it's been fascinating, the merging of data science and DevOps. So to your point, when we started working with the publicly available data from, Johns Hopkins, Our World in Data, and so on, we brought it together, started creating analytic apps, and then we're like, well, a lot of our customers want to see this. And so then we started getting into the DevOps side, but that's a whole nother world. And the data scientist, traditionally does a handshake with somebody else, but no, we had to move quickly. So we, stood up our own servers. We ended up with, traditional DevOps. You got a blue server and a green server. You're, rapidly innovating on the green server. The blue server's in production. You just flip them out. And we built our own little, inside of our data science team, we built a little DevOps team to actually do that. And then we found that, the Hopkins data and other data is pretty limited. So we started going and getting data from all these other places. It's like, amazing number of data sources out there. We've got the Google mobility data. We've got the COVID tracking data. We've got unemployment data in there that some of our customers are asking for. We've just got a ton of data now that is in the application from all these multiple sources. So we're federating that, and, Postgres database, putting our analytics apps on top of that. We're bringing in other data sources through our data virtualization layer, providing data services. It's become this massive kind of operation with lots of different data and analytics, and up into our live hosted app that's refreshing multiple times per day. And then, we started collaborating with these scientists to stop COVID around how to reopen society. And then our DevOps and engineering team, under the office of the CTO, got involved, and we built this application, Tibco Gather Smart, to help bring people back together in a safe way. So that became a focus. We built a control center and a mobile app for people to do symptom tracking. You can sit in the control center, figure out who's going to get what survey. They answer the questions. You decide if you're going to give them a QR code to come into a building based on their self-reported symptoms or local hotspots. And so this became a DevOps-led project to create the cloud-based application and the mobile app for doing the surveys and onboarding the employees and the university students and so on. That's become quite popular too. So we're about to launch that in July, this Tibco Gather Smart. But we wanted to have a bunch of analytics and data science in that for the control center that the employer is looking at across their collection of employees and so on. And so then we were kind of the, the data science fairy dust into that DevOps-led initiative. So we've seen both sides of it at Tibco. Data scientists becoming DevOps savvy people, and DevOps people becoming data scientists, and the boundaries are blurring at Tibco, and I'm seeing that in the rest of the world too. It's where the fast forward button's been pressed, Bill. Right? It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we've talked a lot about is the acceleration. A lot of these digital transformation efforts were already underway, but they've been time compressed because of the COVID pandemic. So what lessons did you learn that maybe other organizations who are working on applications and systems and products, and their engineers are working on them right now, the product managers are working on them right now. If you want to incorporate analytics into those applications from the get-go, what are your recommendations to them based on your experience?
Yeah, so we found that certain people on either side of that fence, if you will, have a desire and passion to learn the other side, and it's kind of be a learn-it-all kind of, not a know-it-all kind of thing. And so certain folks on the data science team got fascinated with how do I make this low latency, high throughput, high response? How do I kind of operationalize this stuff? And they sort of stepped into those roles and as a learning experience. And then similarly on the DevOps engineering side of the house, some people there were like, well, how do I make this control center app cooler? And how do we bring in data and present multi-layered analytics views for consumers of that, and getting fascinated on the data science side. But you do need a bit of both, right? You need to the data scientist who wants to get the DevOps stuff going needs to be able to go to somebody and ask them, how do I do this? Can you help me do this? And vice versa on the engineering side, injecting a data scientist perspective into that world, and the cross fertilization back and forth. It's been really cool, and people have gotten to learn a lot outside of their own comfort zone.
Yeah, and what type of tools did you all use internally to facilitate that type of communication? I mean, does it, and I guess practices as well. So is it happening during weekly stand-ups? Is it happening during the product design phase? How is that, how does that work? And what were some of those what are some learnings that, maybe some things that didn't work really well, or things that, did work really well? So, to make that cross-pollination happen.
Well, it sort of started with the Slack channel that we set up around the pandemic. Back in late February, early March, that Slack channel got really popular. And I think we've still got, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 people on the main COVID Slack channel. And that I sort of put those people to work as well, because as we built data around government interventions at a local level, the people in the channel were all from around the world, and everybody started chipping in. We designed a certain format about the metadata around government interventions, whether it was school closures or shelter in place or whatever it was. We had a taxonomy then, and people went to their local regions and started filling it in. We've actually used that metadata to annotate all of the analyses, and that's become quite important as things have, interventions have been lifted, but then in some places put back on, and now you can see the changes in the reproduction number or the hotspots with that metadata layered onto it. That's been kind of literally crowdsourced, collected around the Tibco worldwide team. So the Slack channel sort of got a lot of enthusiasm going, and as we started to release the Spotify live report with all the data sources started to get added, and everybody was like, well, can you put in this country? And so I said we started with Hopkins, but now we've got like most countries in the world where we've actually gone out and got the data ourselves from different Department of Health sites and so on, and assembled pretty broad coverage at a very local level across worldwide countries. And that's been driven by that internal enthusiasm around the Slack channel. Now, as the projects got stood up, we had daily stand-ups, we had weekly leadership team stand-ups, and we've got that on the live report analytics app for COVID, and we've also got that on the Gather Smart project. And those projects have now kind of merged a little bit, and we've been able to cut back some of the daily stand-ups, but we've got very regular meetings on both the projects and also a group that's working on the confluence of the two. So Slack's been important, I guess, the usual stand-up meetings, and then finding these little tiger teams of people who are really enthusiastic to learn each other's world and collaborate.
Is that something that Tibco had focused on before this, before you started addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, which is sort of that cross-functional development, sort of as part of just normal workforce development, encouraging people to maybe push outside their comfort zone and also providing them time and the resources to do that? Was that just part of Tibco's DNA?
Great question, because some years ago we had this next big thing concept at Tibco, and AI was one of the next big thing topics. And so we had a lot of our product teams were challenged on what are you going to do when it comes to AI, and we have a philosophy of AI being a foundational element of the dev process. And so you think about the three things that drive us. Cloud native is one, AI is a foundation, is another one. And these foundational elements are driven from the top down. So every product manager has to have a better together strategy of the different Tibco products, working together. They have to have something on, what's your AI foundational aspect of this product? What's the cloud native part? And then what's the open source, embracement part of it? So the three guiding principles are, infused through our product. But I guess that the AI part is the bit that has kind of made the data science groups work together with the integration products, because it's just been a natural top-down led initiative. Is let's bring AI into all the products at a foundational level. That's been going on for a few years, and that has kind of started some years ago. This collaboration between data science and DevOps. But like you said, the COVID thing has just accelerated that. We built this Gather Smart app in like 6-8 weeks, and the same thing with the live report on COVID. That just was grown from the ground up in a matter of weeks. Everybody's just working hard and having fun.
Where do you think we're going to go from here when it comes to data analytics and sort of incorporating that into almost everything? We've all become, I think, data analytics experts, or not experts, but at least conversant in the topics. I think with the COVID-19 pandemic, with the daily briefings that people get, we've learned about terms like flattening the curve, and we've learned about exponential growth. So for someone like yourself, for someone like me who was in a previous life, was in a research scientist, a DB administrator. I worked in social science research. So I love anything with data and analytics and being able to tell a good story with it. But a lot of people, you can get lost in the data. A lot of people can glass over. Sometimes data can be used in ways to support a particular point of view, so people discount it. But I think now, it's in the mainstream. And there is an effort to make data science and analytics, and especially visualizations, more prominent in hopefully society in general, and then hopefully people make educated decisions based on some of this. Where do you think we're kind of going from here? So, is it increase? I mean, I'm assuming it's increased acceleration, but what do you see on the horizon for analytics?
Well, the world of data science and visual analytics have just collided and merged, right? And then they've also become highly democratized, to your point. I mean, a turning point for me was when Governor Cuomo started tweeting out, we're going to get our effective reproduction number down to 0.8 to bring this under control. I'm like, dude, that's amazing. I retweeted that, and I was like, because I mentioned to you earlier, we've had tools in our live report that estimate the reproduction number at a very local level, at the county level and so on. We've been tracking the spread of the virus. We saw Michigan before it erupted. Most recently, we saw Arizona, Florida. You can see it. We're predicting the spread, the effective reproduction number as a function of time. But I thought it was a real geeked out thing. And then Cuomo is tweeting about it, that he's going to get it down to 0.8. And it's like, data science is in your living room every night. Yeah. And it's just amazing that you don't have to spend time building the context of a conversation you want to have with a customer about data science. It's already there. People are seeing it every night in their living room. So it's just been fantastic for me as a data scientist to see how democratized, widespread, data science has become, and everybody is becoming a data scientist. It's awesome.
And it's sad, that it took something as tragic as the COVID-19 pandemic to do that. I mean, you and I, people who sort of have been around data and analytics and systems like this for so long, you would be much happier going back to doing retail analysis and, I mean, it's heartbreaking that it's something that it's so tragic that it's brought this to the forefront, but at least it can be a turning point to help people understand how important analytics and data and science is to sort of making effective decisions. Well, Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us again. It's been a great conversation.
Well, let's get back together sometime soon. I mean, we're only 6 months into this year, and we've had a global pandemic. We've had a racial uprising and an economic meltdown. So, Bill, let's get back together later in the year and see where we stand at the end of the year.
Hopefully things will be better. We can, fingers crossed, it can be much better.
Right.
All right, Michael. Thank you again.
Yeah, cheers.
And thank you to all our viewers and listeners for joining us. You can listen to more episodes of Dynamic Developer on your favorite podcast platform, or watch a video of each episode, as well as read a transcript at Tech Republic.